For many people living in rural America, broadband provides a way to express themselves, to give them a voice. Here in the Northern Californian town of Eureka, Access Humboldt is doing just this. It's providing programming, it's providing training and support, and is even rolling out its own wireless network.
Access Humboldt is a community media organization that was formed by the County of Humboldt and the cities in Humboldt County to manage essentially cable franchise resources, so channels, production facilities, and for public education and government purposes. It's like an electronic soapbox. It's a place that the community has a voice that's uncensored and for the most part unfiltered. And it's whatever the community wants to say, the community's voice is empowered through these channels. As a consumer of media content, I now look at the universe of media that's available and I decide, oh, I want to look at this now. I don't schedule my day to go look for when is my program going to be available to me. I just go and find it and I download it and I look at it now on demand. So for us, that means really the channels, the old way of, that used to be the key resource was a channel on a cable system. That's just one of our distribution outlets now. It's not the only one, and it may not be the most, it's still the most important one, but in the future it may not be.
So do you see access to high-speed internet, broadband and open internet as being a universal right for every citizen of the US?
In rural communities and remote communities like ours in Humboldt County in California, we find whole pockets that have virtually no access to the internet. Maybe a dial-up connection is the best connection they can get. So in that sense, making media available over broadband, there is no broadband. There's narrowband internet access, not broadband. And so it's not that meaningful. This led our organization to go from, okay, we started with putting our content, making it available over the internet. Now we have to help make the internet available, make broadband available. So we really shifted the frame of our work from just media access to broadband access, because if you don't have access to the mechanism, to the broadband connection, then you really don't have access to the content that's available through those connections. So we started developing community broadband deployments, wireless, for example, we did a project in a little town that you may visit on your, you'll pass through anyway, called Rio Del, and where this town had very little access to the internet, and we had, through our cable franchise requirement, we had fiber deployment there to City Hall. So we did a wireless, a Wi-Fi deployment where the City Hall, the library, the fire station, we created an free internet access for the public there. And so folks in that community can go to the library or to the fire station, they can bring their laptop and sit in the parking lot, and then they get free access to the internet for that community. One of the things that we have found, unfortunately, is the more that you do build it yourself, and in our case, building it ourselves means partnering with we have private companies that want to see it happen, so they're helping either with donations of equipment or cash or otherwise helping. We have public agencies like a local government that wants to see it happen. A lot of times they have a hard time partnering directly because you have procurement laws and issues about the mechanisms of a public bureaucracy and a private enterprise working together. So the nonprofit, we're a nonprofit, so we sort of facilitate the partnering between private interests and public interests and design, we call them social enterprise model, where we take the incentive that the private sector has and the essential service sort of role that public agencies have, and we put them together and design a process to build these things. So what we find, though, is we're under the radar from the private providers. What occurs is if we are too successful, the AT&Ts of the world, the large commercial providers would say, you're taking business away from us. So even though they weren't providing the service and it wasn't economic for them to do it, they have gotten legislation in place that prevents public agencies from doing the service directly. We actually had a law in California that prohibited a local government from providing internet access to their residents. And it was written by industry basically to prevent us from doing it for ourselves. So we sort of have to involve ourselves in policy just to even protect our ability to do our own thing. We're ready to do things with our own resources, and we had to basically get protection to keep private industry from hobbling us. And you see this across the country. There's state legislation that prohibits a city from providing broadband service. Why? And the rationale that the industry provides is, well, because it's unfair competition, unfair to have the public government competing with the private sector. And the local government says, but you weren't serving our community to begin with. We're not competing with you because you decided not to serve us. Or you serve us at such a low quality of service or at such a high price that there's no uptake, because it's really the access and to broadband is a combination of factors. It's basic access, having it available, and then affordability is a factor. Industry is so invested in lobbying and influencing legislation and regulation that we really have to figure out how to overcome the sort of disproportionate influence of private profit incentives in a sphere that really is about fundamentally how we are informed, how we understand. And if the marketplace of ideas is only private marketplace, then we're missing out on some very important parts of who we are as human beings and what we need to, what our quality of life is going to look like.